all through from elementary flying, like from your initial training school, you've got a lot of classroom studies to do in mathematics, trigonometry, navigation, radio and Morse code, aircraft recognition, Air Force administration and regulations, which are all part, and of course on top of which, the same as any other recruit, has to do their squad drill training.
I see. Did you complete your entire training in Western Australia?
Well, up till the advanced training on Avro-Ansons, yes. But later on, because I had to, before going into operations in the Southwest Pacific, you've got to do what's called operational training on the aircraft that you're going to fly in operations.
So you did in fact serve outside of Australia?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any special impressions about your training which you can recollect?
No, I suppose there's no, you read a lot of stories when you're young about the big thrill of the first solo flight. In a Tiger Moth, there's no big thrill. It's quite a very docile aircraft, and there was more thrill in the actual first flight that you had, even like when the instructor's flying it, than the first solo flight that you're doing on your own. The first aeroplane flight is probably the biggest thrill, particularly when that age and you'd never seen one before.
Now, you served outside of Australia. Now, where was that?
Well, before I went there, after I finished training at Geraldton, I was posted to an air observer school. That's a navigation school in Cootamundra in New South Wales. And after you finish at Geraldton, or what they call a service flying training course, some of them go to training schools as instructors or to be instructors. Others go to these other training schools for navigators and wireless operators who've got to get flying experience, so they've got to have pilots to fly them round. And I had about 18 months staff flying at Cootamundra, which was an air observer school, and because while I was there, that school got shifted up to Evans Head in New South Wales, and so I did about 18 months as a staff pilot, which probably was a very good experience and probably assisted me in surviving the war.
Right. Well, so after Australia, you went into the Pacific Theatre War, didn't you?
Well, first of all, from Evans Head, I went to an operational training unit, which was number 5 OTU, which was based at Tokemore in New South Wales. It was a Beaufighter training school, but before you can fly a Beaufighter, you've got there's no Beaufighters with dual control in them, so you don't have any instruction on them. The nearest they can ever get to them is the Beaufort bomber, which is a twin-engine bomber, and so before you go near a Beaufighter, they give you about 60 hours on a Beaufort bomber. And while they're somewhat similar, in real life there's no comparison. You do about 60 hours on the Beauforts, and then an instructor takes you up for a ride in a Beaufighter and say, righto, now it's your turn. And but before you do so, you have to they made you sit in the cockpit, and you had to memorise every instrument, every control, every little switch from in the cockpit, from the left-hand side right round to the right-hand side of the cockpit, and then from there over your head down the other side. And I think there was 158 different objects in there, or instruments, that you had to, and you had to sit down in the classroom and write them down on a piece of paper in that order, because when the time comes, you've got to find them without looking at them. And so after you've done that, I don't know whether anybody ever got them all right, but after you've done that satisfactorily, then it's your turn to go out and just fly one. And so we had about 60 hours on the Beauforts, but strangely enough, you only get about 35 hours on your Beaufighters, and that's then they say you're a war pilot.
And so you went to Frontline service.
Well, here's another funny twist, of course, is that having trained on Beaufighters, I got posted to a Boston squadron, which was number 22 squadron, and which was equipped with the American-built Bostons, Douglas Boston. They're also a single-seat cockpit. And there's no aircraft fitted with dual control. So here again, you just have a ride with a pilot just lying down behind the pilot and just looking over his shoulder and see what he does. And he takes you up for one ride, and then same as with the Beaufighter, it's your turn. And so I did precisely 4 hours of training on a Boston bomber. It's a low-level bomber, and about 4 hours training on that, and or experience on it before I did my first operation. But the squadron at that time was based up at Norfolk Island in Gilvink Bay off the top of Dutch New Guinea.
And when did you join the squadron there?
That was about October the 3rd, 1944. Of course, the war had advanced up there. Not the Japanese had been retreat, but they'd been cut off by the American and the Allied forces advancing along the top side of north of Dutch New Guinea, and I say this base then at Norfolk was sort of well advanced. By that time I got there, the Americans had already landed up at, they had bases at Cape Sansepor off the west coast of western tip of Dutch New Guinea, and at Middleburg Island, and also right up at Morotai in the north of the yhears.
How did you feel about being on active frontline duty?
Well, you've been trained for it, and because you feel, I suppose, like a lot of others, if you're flying 10-ton of aeroplane with 4 20mm cannons sticking out the nose and a couple of bombs underneath, you sort of feel invincible. It doesn't take you very long to learn that the other fellow on the ground, he can shoot back, and usually does. And it didn't have a great deal of effect, except that you'd fly for maybe 2.5 hours out to a target area, and that's just straight flying, and all that was over miles and miles of ocean. You didn't have any real feelings till within about, well, just a minute or so before you get to your target area, where you've got things to do. You know it's coming up, and so you change all your power ratios and things like that. And once you start doing things, well, then the butterflies in your stomach, if you like, they're always there, but you forget all about them then once you get busy.
And so your duties were basically to go out, what, once a day?
No, you didn't go out every day, because I think a lot of the Australian squadrons then had sort of run out of targets. We had most of the Japanese installations down that area had been virtually destroyed, but they had a lot of nuisance value, and the Australian squadrons at that time were keeping these Japanese bases neutralised.